Officers assaulted a black woman. Seconds later, she said, I'm the new chief. The officers thought she was just another black woman they could push around. But when she stood up, calm, fearless, and unshaken, the entire station fell silent. Because in that moment, they realized the woman they'd just assaulted wasn't a suspect. She was their new police chief. And what she said next changed every badge in that room. Stay tuned and subscribe before you hear it. The station buzzed with routine chaos, phones ringing, boots scraping, radios spitting static. Morning light spilled through dusty windows, catching the polished badges of men who thought they'd seen it all. Until she walked in, a black woman, mid-30s maybe, tailored coat, chin high, eyes steady. She carried a single leather folder pressed against her chest like it contained her heartbeat. No one recognized her, but everyone felt something shift. Officer Riley leaned on the counter, half bored, half cocky. Ma'am, citizen services are downstairs, he said, not even looking up from his coffee. I'm here for a meeting, she replied. Her tone was calm, measured, not timid, not loud, just enough to make heads turn. Riley finally looked at her and smirked. With whom? With whoever's in charge. A few chuckles rippled through the room. Another officer, Torres, stepped forward. The chief doesn't take walk-ins, he said. You can leave your complaint form. I don't have a complaint, she interrupted gently. I have a message. That word, message, hung in the air like a challenge. Riley set his cup down. Lady, you can't just stroll in here talking like that. She didn't move. Her gaze traveled across the badges, the flags, the framed oath of honor on the wall, then back to Riley. Maybe that's the problem, she said quietly. The laughter stopped. For a split second, nobody knew whether to feel threatened or embarrassed. All right, that's it, Riley muttered. Let's get her out of here. He reached for her arm, but she stepped back, not fast, just deliberate. Don't, she said. The single word carried more authority than any shout could, Torres scoffed. You're in a police station, lady. We tell people what to do here, she sighed, lowered her folder to the desk, and repeated, Then maybe I'm in the right place. That calm confidence, coming from someone they assumed powerless, sparked irritation. Riley grabbed her wrist to escort her out. The folder slipped from her hand. The push came next, too quick, too rough. Papers scattered like white feathers across the floor. The room froze. Even the hum of the lights seemed to fade. She caught herself on a chair, straightened slowly, and fixed her jacket. Her eyes met Riley's, not with anger, but something worse. Disappointment. Are you finished? She asked. The question, simple as it was, made the room feel smaller. Riley stepped back, trying to regain control. Ma'am, you're resisting an officer. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. Resisting? She echoed. Then, calm as a sunrise. I haven't even started. She bent down, gathered the papers, aligned them neatly, and placed them on the desk. Call your captain, she said. Torres folded his arms. Why should we? She opened the folder, revealing an embossed seal, signatures, and a gold badge resting on top. Because I'm the reason he's late this morning. The officers exchanged glances. Riley leaned in to read the document, and froze. His lips moved silently as he read the title line again. Chief of Police, Danielle Hayes. She extended her hand slowly toward him. Now, she said, voice soft but unbreakable, let's introduce ourselves properly. Nobody spoke. Not a whisper. She walked past them, her heels echoing like a countdown. Every badge in the room gleamed under the fluorescent light, suddenly heavy, suddenly real. And though not one officer dared meet her eyes, everyone there would remember that moment. The exact second they realized the woman they'd shoved wasn't another face off the street. She was the one now signing their paychecks, and she hadn't even raised her voice. For a long, unbearable moment, no one moved. The sound of the clock on the wall, tick, 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 became the only thing alive in the room. Chief Danielle Hayes stood perfectly still. Not a hint of anger on her face, not a tremor in her voice. She didn't need to shout. Her very presence rewrote the hierarchy of the room. Riley's hand still hovered mid-air, frozen halfway to his holster. He'd touched her. He'd shoved her. And now, every muscle in his body begged time to rewind. Captain Mason, she said finally, her voice low but sharp as glass. Somewhere in the back, The captain appeared, older, gray around the temples, a man who had spent 2 decades surviving in the system. He looked from her to his men, reading the situation instantly. His face was drained of color. "Chief Hayes?" he whispered, disbelief clinging to every syllable. "Good morning, Captain," she replied. "Your officers were kind enough to welcome me personally." Riley dropped his gaze to the floor. The folder on the desk was still open, her name glowing against the city seal. Every eye flicked toward it, as if hoping it might suddenly disappear. "Chief, I didn't know," Riley began. "You didn't ask," she interrupted. "That's what makes this worse." The silence that followed wasn't quiet, it was suffocating. The kind that forces people to hear their own heartbeat. Hayes stepped forward, slow and deliberate, her heels slicing through the hush like punctuation marks. She stopped right in front of Riley, close enough that he could see the faint scar on her cheek, an old mark from a life that taught her patience and pain. "When you saw me," she said, "what did you see?" Riley swallowed. "Ma'am, No," she said, eyes locked on his. "Answer the question." He opened his mouth, but words failed him. Behind her, Torres fidgeted. Another officer pretended to check his phone. None of them wanted to speak the truth out loud. Hayes nodded slowly, reading every expression in the room. "You saw a black woman. You saw someone who didn't fit your picture of power. Someone you thought you could correct, control, or dismiss. Am I right?" Nobody answered. Nobody had to. The shame in their faces said enough. Then she turned to Captain Mason. "And you," she said softly, "how many times have you seen something like this and stayed quiet?" He hesitated. "Too many," he admitted. She nodded again, emotion flickering behind her calm exterior. "That's the silence that rots the walls of this building. Not the yelling, not the mistakes, the silence." Riley finally looked up, eyes wet, voice trembling. "Chief, I'm sorry." Hayes studied him for a long second. "You're sorry because I have power," she said. "What would you be if I didn't?" He didn't answer. "Couldn't." Hayes turned away, taking a deep breath. The station still smelled of coffee and paperwork, but something invisible had shifted. The air was heavier, humbler. "Every department has rules," she said, addressing them all now. "But respect isn't written on paper. It's in how you treat the people who walk through those doors, especially the ones who look like me." A long pause. Then she reached for the badge on her folder and pinned it to her coat, slowly, ceremonially. The sound of the metal clicking in place echoed like a verdict. "I didn't come here to fire anyone today," she said, "but I did come to change how this place breathes." And just like that, she walked toward her new office, each step a quiet reminder that justice didn't always arrive in sirens or uniforms. Sometimes it wore heels and patience. When she disappeared behind the glass door, no one dared to speak. The silence she left behind wasn't fear anymore. It was a reflection. The intercom crackled, slicing through the lingering silence of the station. All personnel to the main hall. Immediate assembly officers shuffled in, whispers bouncing off the walls. Riley, Torres, and the rest of the men who had underestimated her now trailed behind, unsure whether to look at each other or at the floor. Chief Danielle Hayes stood at the front, calm, composed, her badge catching the harsh fluorescent light like a warning. No one spoke. No one dared. "Yesterday," she began, her voice steady, "some of you made a choice." She paused, letting the words sink in. "You chose fear over duty, assumptions over respect. And one of you," her gaze swept slowly across the room, "assaulted me because of who I am." A low murmur started. She held up a hand. "Don't. I will not be interrupted." Riley's jaw tightened. Torres fidgeted. Their mistakes were written all over their faces, and now the room had become a mirror. They could see themselves, unflattering and exposed. "This isn't about me," Hayes continued. "It's about every citizen who comes through those doors expecting safety and fairness. It's about the countless people ignored, mistreated, and silenced because they didn't fit the mold of what this department expected." She gestured toward the projector screen, and suddenly images of market vendors flashed across the room, faces of black men, women, and children, their stories trapped in papers, receipts, and recorded videos. The officers froze. "These people," she said, "paid over $10 million in illegal fees, bribes, extortion, every transaction, every intimidation, every unjust arrest documented. Torres's face went pale. Riley's fingers twitched at his sides. Hayes let the pause stretch. And yet, she said softly, they were silent. Not because they wanted to, but because the system taught them fear. That ends today. The projector switched to a short video clip. Officers could see themselves, Riley yelling, Torres shoving a vendor, a city official counting cash in the back office. The evidence was undeniable. A collective intake of breath swept through the room. Some officers averted their eyes. Others couldn't. Hayes stepped forward, voice rising slightly. This department has rules, but rules mean nothing without integrity, without accountability, without courage. And I intend to make sure each of you remembers that starting now. She reached for a folder, opened it, and held it for all to see. Starting today, all complaints are handled directly by an independent review board. Every shift, every interaction, every citizen encounter will be documented and transparent. No exceptions. No excuses. A ripple went through the hall. Even the most hardened veterans shifted uncomfortably. And you, she said, locking eyes with Riley and Torres, will have to face the consequences of your actions. Riley swallowed hard. Chief? I understand, he murmured. Hayes nodded, but her eyes remained fierce. Understanding is the first step. Action comes next. The department you inherit, our community, deserves better than silence. They deserve justice, and I will see that they get it. A hush fell again, heavier than before. This wasn't fear anymore. It was reckoning. Change doesn't happen overnight, Hayes concluded, but it starts with courage, with truth, with accountability. And from today, every person in this room will either help rebuild this department or be part of its downfall. She stepped down from the podium, letting the weight of her words settle. Officers looked at each other, some with guilt, some with determination. For the first time, the station wasn't just a building filled with uniforms. It was a place where change could happen, if they were brave enough to embrace it. And somewhere deep in the room, a few young officers dared to hope that the days of fear, corruption, and silence were finally over. The hum of computers filled the IT room, a low, constant reminder that this department was about to be exposed. Chief Danielle Hayes sat at the center, her fingers hovering over the keyboard, eyes scanning spreadsheets and files. Marcus, the IT specialist, had been working tirelessly, piecing together 6 months of deleted footage, payroll records, and citizen complaints. This pattern, Marcus muttered, shaking his head. It's worse than we thought. Every market day, every shift Torres worked outside his schedule, there's another victim. Hayes leaned closer, her calm composure betraying nothing, though her mind raced. Show me everything. I want to see the faces, the names, the receipts. Every last detail. Hours passed. Footsteps echoed in the hall. Officers came and went, some curious, some apprehensive. The whispers were barely contained. Chief Hayes! What is she doing? Is this legal? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The screen told the story. Black men, women, and elderly citizens forced into paying bribes, intimidated, or thrown out like they were invisible. Their faces, their fear, their desperation, it was all laid bare. Look at this, Marcus said, pointing to a folder labeled Ghost Shifts. Overtime paid, but no work done. Millions over 5 years? Torres Hayes. It's not just him. Hayes knew. Hayes's eyes hardened. The system is rotten, and everyone who kept quiet is part of it. Just then, Amy Parker entered, holding her phone tightly. Chief, I have more. Years of recordings, hidden receipts, notes I took. I was scared before, but I can't ignore this anymore. Hayes nodded, pride flickering for a moment. Good, bring it all. Nothing is too small. Every piece matters. Together, they compiled the evidence. Every transaction, every assault, every moment of abuse of power became a brick in the case they were building. Hayes felt a quiet satisfaction. Finally, the truth would rise from the shadows. But there was a complication. Torres and Hayes weren't idle. They sensed the walls closing in. Messages were sent in whispers, plans hatched in secret corners. Hayes knew time was short. We need this airtight, she said. And we need it before they can cover it up again. Marcus enhanced video after video, pulling clear images from grainy footage, syncing audio to show exactly what had been said in hushed tones. The recordings revealed it all: bribes, threats, racial intimidation. Every lie is documented. Every fear is exploited. Hayes walked through the rows of screens, absorbing the stories. An elderly man shoved to the ground. A black woman threatened over unpaid fees. A teenager asking about his father, shoved and silenced. The pattern was systematic, deliberate, cruel. "This is what happens when courage is optional," she whispered. People get hurt because silence is easier than confrontation. Hours bled into the night. Officers who had once ignored the corruption now stared at screens, unable to look away. The weight of the truth was inescapable. Finally, Hayes turned to her team. "Tomorrow we will present this, not just to this station, but to the city. Every violation, every cover-up, it's going public. Those who are complicit will have nowhere to hide." Amy's hands trembled. "What about the city council? Hayes? They'll try to stop us," Hayes smiled faintly, coldly. "Then they'll learn that courage is stronger than fear. That truth is heavier than money. And that one black woman refusing to stay silent can change everything." The screen flickered with one final set of images. Faces of the victims, the stolen money, the ghost shifts, the threats. Every piece is a testament to decades of abuse, and now to the reckoning to come. Tomorrow the department would see the weight of its sins. But tonight, Hayes and her team prepared, determined and unstoppable. The first wave of justice was about to hit, and no one, not Torres, not Hayes, not any of the complicit officers, would escape the storm. The main hall was silent, thick with tension, as Chief Danielle Hayes strode in, her badge gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. Officers lined up along the walls, murmuring anxiously. Some avoided her gaze. Others froze, caught between fear and guilt. Riley and Torres were front and center, faces pale, hands clammy. They had seen the evidence, heard the recordings, and knew the storm had arrived. There was no escape. "Yesterday," Hayes began, voice steady, carrying through the hall, "some of you thought you could act without consequence. You thought fear, intimidation, and corruption would protect you. You were wrong." She gestured to the large projector screen. The images flickered to life. Black citizens coerced into paying bribes, children frightened by police intimidation, and elderly vendors shoved aside. Every face, every injustice laid bare. Gasps echoed through the room. Even the veteran officers who had turned a blind eye now sat frozen, unable to deny what they were seeing. "This department," Hayes continued, "was built on fear. Fear of authority, fear of reprisal, fear of speaking the truth. But today, that ends. Every bribe, every ghost shift, every act of racial intimidation will be accounted for." Torres' lips trembled. "Chief, we can explain?" "No," Hayes cut him off. "There is nothing to explain. Every recording, every receipt, every photograph proves what you did. Your time hiding behind badges is over." She turned to Riley. "And you," she said softly, "you enabled this. Silence is complicity. Every moment you looked away, you became part of the problem." A video played showing Torres handing envelopes to Hayes in hushed tones, laughing as they extorted vendors. The audio revealed threats, manipulation, and deliberate targeting of black citizens. The room went cold. Hayes raised her voice. "Do you understand the magnitude of what you've done?" Riley's hands shook. Torres's eyes darted to the floor. No one moved. "Today," she said, "justice will be served. But this isn't about punishment alone. This is about rebuilding, about restoring trust, about proving that one black woman refusing to stay silent can dismantle decades of abuse." Hayes gestured, and Officer Amy Parker stepped forward holding her phone, displaying years of videos and evidence she had quietly collected. Trembling but resolute, she spoke. "I recorded everything. I watched, I feared, but now we have the chance to set things right." The officers' faces turned pale as the evidence streamed across the screens. Millions in stolen funds, abuse of power, and systematic racism, meticulously documented. Hayes's eyes swept the room. "This is your opportunity," she said. "Step forward, confess, and help us rebuild. Refuse, and you'll face the full weight of the law." Slowly, hands began to rise. First one, then two, then dozens. Officers who had hidden in silence now chose accountability. The tide had turned. Torres fell to his knees, voice cracking. "Chief, I'm sorry. I didn't know." Hayes stepped closer, her calm intensity freezing him in place. "It's too late for ignorance. It's time for action. Confess, make restitution, change, or face justice. The room held its collective breath. Silence gave way to confessions, admissions, and the first glimmers of transformation. Officers realized that protecting the vulnerable wasn't optional. It was the very essence of their duty. Hayes turned to the younger officers, her voice warm but firm. The future of this department rests on you. Lead with integrity, protect with courage, serve without fear, learn from the mistakes of those who came before you. The projector screen switched to images of the market district, now safe, vendors smiling, children playing, the community finally breathing freely. Hayes's voice rang out, echoing in the hall. This is what happens when courage replaces silence, when truth replaces fear, when justice replaces complacency. And remember, every action you take from this moment forward will shape the legacy of this department. A hush fell over the room. For the first time in decades, the officers understood the power of accountability, the strength of transparency, and the weight of integrity. Chief Danielle Hayes looked directly at the camera mounted above the hall. This is how change begins. One brave act, one decision to stand for justice. Let this be a lesson inside these walls and beyond. Courage is contagious, and it starts with you. Sunlight streamed through the lobby's new glass walls, bouncing off polished floors and clean, open spaces. Where fear once lingered, hope now thrived. Chief Danielle Hayes walked through the room, observing the changes her leadership had inspired. Officers moved with purpose, their uniforms no longer symbols of intimidation, but badges of responsibility. Mrs. Chen, the elderly grocer who had once trembled at the sight of a police officer, approached hesitantly, holding a small box of oranges. "Chief Hayes?" she asked softly. Hayes smiled warmly. "Yes, Mrs. Chen, come in." Mrs. Chen's hand shook, but this time it was with gratitude, not fear. "My daughter. She wants to be like you," she whispered. "She says she wants to help, to serve." Hayes knelt slightly, locking eyes with a young girl peeking from behind her mother. "Our doors are open to everyone," she said. "Courage doesn't care about age, race, or background. It only needs a willing heart." Across town, Amy Parker led the first official internal affairs meeting under the new regime. 6 young officers sat around the table, notebooks open, ready to rebuild a culture of accountability. Transparency wasn't just policy, it was practice. Every complaint, every concern would now be heard and addressed. Outside the market district, the transformation was tangible. Black, brown, and Asian vendors smiled freely, children played safely, and parents shopped without the shadow of fear. Officer Washington walked his beat, greeting vendors, buying fresh produce, and engaging with the community. Small acts, helping a child retrieve a ball, offering directions, assisting an elderly shopper, replaced intimidation with humanity. In the training room, posters of aggressive policing had been replaced with community engagement images. New recruits learned that force was a last resort, de-escalation the first. Every interaction mattered, and every choice to serve, not dominate, was reinforced daily. Hayes paused in the lobby where she had once been slapped. The memory lingered, but it no longer defined the space. She pinned her badge back on her uniform, feeling the weight differently now, not as authority over others, but as responsibility to protect and serve. "Justice doesn't arrive on its own," she addressed her team who had gathered around. "It doesn't fall from the sky. It happens when ordinary people choose extraordinary courage." Amy handed out flyers with a new 24/7 anonymous hotline for reporting corruption or abuse. Multiple languages were available, ensuring every voice in the community could be heard safely. The phones buzzed constantly, not with fear, but with hope and vigilance. Months later, the department's transformation was undeniable. Young black and brown cadets trained alongside experienced officers, learning that integrity was their true weapon. Community programs flourished. Officers who had once participated in corruption worked to make amends, returning stolen funds and rebuilding trust. Hayes watched as the city's heart healed. Vendors who had feared Torres and his cronies now smiled. Children ran freely through safe streets, and citizens knew their police force belonged to them, not the other way around. Finally, she turned to the camera mounted above the lobby, her voice firm, warm, and resolute. 3 months ago, a black woman was assaulted in this very spot, underestimated, ignored, and disrespected. Today, that same woman leads a department that serves, protects, and honors its community. Courage starts with one person refusing to stay silent. One video, one call, one stand, and it spreads. Justice begins with you. The camera blinked, recording every word, every expression. A symbol of accountability, transparency, and hope. Hayes smiled not just for herself, but for every citizen who had been ignored, silenced, or afraid. The department's story had been rewritten. The legacy of fear was replaced with one of courage, service, and equality. The future was not perfect. It never would be. But it was different, safer, stronger, just. And it had begun with one black woman standing firm, refusing to leave until justice was done. If one black woman's courage can change an entire police department, imagine what happens when you refuse to stay silent. Record it. Speak up. Stand tall. Justice begins with action, and it starts with you. Subscribe now, hit the bell, and never miss a story that proves courage changes everything.